Hey guys, All in Crypto here, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another YouTube video. I hope you've all had a wonderful weekend and are starting the week off with a bang and have had a great day so far. Today, we're going to be diving into our daily cryptocurrency market update, and we're going to be doing a number of things within this video, going over what's really sort of happening within the cryptocurrency space right now, also touching on the external world around us. You know, crypto has and is very much acting, certainly Bitcoin, like one of those risk assets, like your equities. And there's a lot of correlation between crypto right now and the traditional financial world. And it's important to remember that because often the answers to what's happening within our space lie elsewhere in other spaces, like the sort of broader financial landscape, everything going on in a macroeconomic sense. We've also got the Federal Reserve that are looking to up interest rates, the Fed fund rate. That I think they're going to do it by 25 basis points, which is only 1/4%. It's not really an inflationary tackling figure or an inflationary tackling rate rise, but what it is it kind of shows that they are committed to seeing out what they've previously outlined, when sort of credibility for the Federal Reserve, in my opinion, is at all-time low. And in terms of economies across the world, not just in the US, there's a lot of uncertainty. And this all factors into the cryptocurrency space. So we're going to be going over the Bitcoin chart, talking to you guys about the range that we're in. I've been doing a lot of sort of range trading on a short term, but also looking at Bitcoin on a long term, looking at this sort of big range between your sort of 29K all the way up to, I believe, sort of 65K that we've been in now essentially for a year and a third. So there's also ranges within this that we sort of bounce around in, but we'll get into it all. We're going to be going over some tweets from Elon Musk talking about the fact that he's not selling his Bitcoin, Ethereum, or of course Dogecoin. Bitcoin Ether sees brief spike after Elon says he isn't selling. So we're going to be getting into that, getting into a number of things surrounding that. Now, why is he not selling those? Well, you know, I've often speculated on why I believe Elon Musk chose Dogecoin. And I think it could just be a big joke. Dogecoin, for anybody familiar with the technology behind it, is a very lame cryptocurrency. Now, I don't say that to annoy any of you Dogecoin holders out there. At the end of the day, Dogecoin did extremely well during the bull market. We had wrote it off completely as a meme token, which is essentially what it is. But when you have a community behind something, it can really push it. Certainly, Elon really helped it go in the right direction. But I've always sort of came up with reasons why I believe he actually chose Dogecoin. And I think it's a big FU to the Federal Reserve and to fiat systems. I think what he's trying to do is show you that a complete meme that is backed by nothing, it doesn't even have its own mining algorithm, it shares it with Litecoin. Please don't think I'm bashing Dogecoin out here, but as a crypto, as a blockchain, it's very unimpressive. And really the only reason it pumped was because of the community behind it and the kind of meme behind it. The power of a meme can never really be underestimated. And people made a lot of money off the back end of that. But I think he's often, you know, anybody looking at the economy, anybody looking at fiat systems, the destination that they're heading to is very obvious. And it has been apparent for a long time. Personally, Satoshi in 2008 really noticed this and kind of brought it to the forefront with the creation of Bitcoin, which has proven to be his vision, has worked out extremely accurately. So I think one reason that he backed them was to kind of, you know, show you that these random meme currencies can actually outperform a government-backed fiat system and hold value in relation to them. And I think that's why he's doing this all. But what he's highlighting here is the fact that inflation is going to continue. He's already seeing it affect the likes of Tesla and SpaceX. But this is something that, in my opinion, is going to continue to grow. And Michael Saylor has a really interesting take on it all, essentially calling for the collapse of your sort of smaller fiat currencies. We're seeing dollar strength at the moment, really on the back end of euro failings. You know, the euro, in my opinion, is in huge trouble, and this whole Russia-Ukraine situation has really flared that. We're also seeing commodities across the board spike up, which again factors into crypto, because if we enter some sort of a recession, which there are definitely things pointing towards that, how does the cryptocurrency market fare when you have a restricted economy where people aren't as flush? We've been overly flush over the past 2 years, given the fact the Federal Reserve really just pumps money into the system, and your assets, commodities, equities, and crypto benefit off the back end of that. So there's always a lot to get into, guys. Talking a little bit about how we are going to, you know, one thing that's also important to remember during this downtrend, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the downtrend, because this isn't rational, irrational selling that we're seeing right here. This was, and usually after something like this, you get that take place, or at least some sort of a return rally. This is a lot more calculated, if that makes sense. So there is something to be said about that, but we will get into the charts and everything. We'll just fly through the news and then we'll jump into all the charts. But one thing that I really want people to remember, whilst we're in this downtrend, we are seeing crypto adoption continue and in actual fact accelerate. And the price just does not reflect that whatsoever. And we've often tried to draw this distinction with you guys between price and actual value. Now, that sounds completely strange and counterintuitive, but there is always value to be realized. And I think crypto has that. And I think crypto as an industry is at a kind of pinnacle point. We've been consolidating for essentially a year and a quarter now. We are, in my opinion, going to break to the upside of this. It's almost like we're coiling up, but that doesn't mean we can't sort of bounce around in the range that we're in before that happens. And I think this is largely going to come on the back end of regulatory clarity within the US, which we know we are set to receive after 180 days of the executive order on digital assets being signed. So we're at a very, if this comes out in our favor and they go, okay, we're going to allow it to flourish, just make sure you guys pay taxes and do this, crypto's off to the races, guys. It's to the moon. And, at a $1.7 trillion market cap, there's a lot of growth that can be had there. There's a lot of money out there that's looking for a safe haven, which is why you see the likes of Elon saying that he's not selling his Bitcoin. And also, you have the likes of Michael Saylor and a number of big companies now that are now getting into, actually holding Bitcoin on the balance sheet. And if these guys do well, it's going to show to the rest of the world, the rest of these big companies that, hang on, why would we hold cash on the balance sheet that has a huge, very high level of inflation? 7.9% was the recent CPI figures, when we can hold something like Bitcoin that actually outperforms over the long term and is actually going to grow the balance sheets rather than reduce them and almost become a liability to hold. Elon, remember, he did do a video where he spoke about in Europe, he was actually getting negative interest rates, which means that he was paying the banks to hold on to his money, which is insanity, guys. It's a totally backwards world that we're in. So this, of course, was the big, and we'll also dive into this. This, of course, was the big kind of story today. As Elon says, he's not selling his Ethereum, Dogecoin, or Bitcoin. Dogecoin spikes briefly after Musk says he won't sell his crypto holdings. Price of the meme coin often surges after somebody mentions. Yes, it's kind of a deepening effect. This is the actual tweet here. As a general principle, for those looking for advice from this thread, it is generally better to own physical things like a home, stocks, and companies you think make good products than dollars when inflation is high. I still own and won't sell Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Dogecoin. So that's the actual tweet. Just like me, I'm a hodler. And the reason being is because, I could go and have my money sat in the bank account. Yes, there is a kind of trend-based trader in me that does want to kind of sell at the top and buy at the bottom so that I can kind of double my holdings or increase my holdings as I go along. But ultimately, being a hodler, you will often get caught out. I can't tell you, and any good trader during this time period would have been caught out multiple times. If they're telling you they haven't, they're absolute liars. What saves them is their risk management. And that's, a trading kind of things. But as an investor, ultimately over the long term, I think this technology does very, very well and is still only on the kind of adoption curve. We're yet to see, it's a very small amount of the population that actually own crypto. It's an even smaller part that use it. We've not really seen that usage kick in and kind of drive the next level of adoption. But we are starting to see it in a lot of emerging nations and a number of other places. So that was interesting. And then he also had a thread, which is worth me bringing up. What are your thoughts about probable inflation rates over the next few years? Tesla and SpaceX are seeing significant recent inflation pressures in raw materials and logistics. And we are not alone. Absolutely. Commodities are going through the roof, ladies and gentlemen. And they're blaming this. Yes, there is a supply chain issue, and that is one of the main drivers. When you have a restricted supply, but the demand is constant, if not increasing, then of course the supply goes up in value because it can't keep up with the demand. So there is that element, but also one thing that the Fed have done is flooded the system with money, which of course they seem to stay ignorant to, has really affected your prices generally. So the supply chain issue is a huge one. It's been amplified with what's going on currently. It's why we're seeing the likes of the euro not do too well against the dollar. And if this continues, people are really going to go, well, hang on, we're not going to why, you know, our wages just are simply not going to be able to. And this is the big awakening with crypto and certainly Bitcoin, and really back to Satoshi's vision. Our wages aren't going to cover basic things. You know, we're holding our money in cash and we're just getting taxed via inflation on top of tax. When we have soaring gas prices, one thing that people always forget, your government is in many respects against you in the form of the fact that they tax oil heavily. Some places up to 80%. I can't remember what it is in the UK. I think it's 50%, 56%-ish. But if they cared about us so much, why wouldn't they drop that tax rate, making oil cheaper across the board? Yet they're keeping it because now they're getting more tax off the back end of it. You know, it's all very questionable, a lot of what's going on right now, but that's kind of enough on that topic. This is Michael Saylor's weigh in on inflation. USD consumer inflation will continue near all-time high, and asset inflation will run at double the rate of consumer price. Weaker currencies will collapse, and the flight of capital from cash, debt, and value stocks, scarce property like Bitcoin, will intensify. That's what we're kind of hoping for, but that's a lot of turmoil for the world. There's always a downside to every upside, and you know, everyone's really in the US dollar in the US, so they lose, and certainly the ones that aren't in Bitcoin or in assets, which we know is the bottom 40% of individuals within the US, don't even have £1,000 in savings, let alone assets. So it's a painful journey that we're on, in my opinion. Got the likes of Goldman Sachs tiptoeing into Ethereum, also buying it. A16Z just splurged 17 million on Ethereum staking protocols. You know, people are going to want to monetize this, and they know that we're early on that kind of adoption, and it's coming. Pro Crypto candidate Yoon Suk Yeol wins South Korea's presidency. You know, the world is becoming more and more crypto friendly. In the same way that we see Gary Gensler be the chairman of the SEC after previously teaching blockchain at MIT. So Bitcoin, we've essentially been in this range now for a year and a quarter, a year and a third, and it looks like we're just sort of coiling up for that break on a bigger scale. And I think the break from this potentially could be momentum. So I think it could be followed with a lot of momentum. Where you are now, I've seen a lot of different sort of midway points for this range be drawn. But it is a key round about this sort of 43K, 43K mark is extremely, or up to 44. I'd really say that sort of 2K range is extremely significant, and we're at the bottom side of it currently. Now we do have a ascending triangle setting up where we're kind of hammering on the floor of the top with the ascending support kind of coiling us up, but it's doing it very volatilistically. And the difference between this may not be the bottom. It may be. We could be setting up structure. We could end up coming up to the top here, not only breaking this mid-range, coming up, convincingly staying above it, and then start to tackle some of these ranges here, which is what we need to see. But the difference between this sell-off here was it was sharp and panic-fueled. And also on the back end of a lot of cascade of liquidations. This is exiting. This is people exiting continuously. Eventually, the sell pressure does wane, and we can see that if we flip to a weekly, you can see that you do have your sell pressure somewhat exhausting with these marginally high highs. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that it's done. There's a lot of indecision with these wicks. You know, typically you'll have, the wicks will be more one-sided than this. With this, they're quite equal, but it does favor the downside just doing some wick analysis. And ultimately, you know, either scenario I'm fine with. This is the key level that you don't want to break, your sort of 29K. I don't think we will break that, but, you know, I could quite easily, just as I could see us going to the upside, there's always two probabilities. I could see us going to the downside. And you are definitely at the bottom half of this range right now in general. So you are below it. If you look at your sort of mid-range, I'm drawn all over the place now. You are definitely below it, and you are consolidating below it. So we need to see a break. We need to see a clear break. That could come on the back end of good news. Right now, the trend is definitely down. And you'll notice every time that we get a pump, people are very comfortable shorting it. What you want to get to is where people actually get killed off with that, because people get overconfident and that's why you see these big spikes like we've seen here. Because people are confident shorting this, they get liquidated and then become forced buyers. So we are range bound here. We're almost coiling up on a macro scale and also a micro scale, but the probability You know, I'm really trying to call this. I'm not 100% sure. Long run, Bitcoin calls up and continues for all the reasons that we've spoken about. Short term, there is, of course, the possibility that we do see a spill to the downside, but also the pattern. I mean, this is typically when you get a triangle like this and you coil up, typically you break to the upside in opposition with when you get a triangle like this where you're coiling to the downside. So this is typically quite a bullish structure that we've got on the short term or the more immediate time frame. Say short term, it's been nearly over 2 months now. This could be setting up for a break to the upside, but there is the downtrend, and you do get within these periods of very low volume, and we do still have whales buying, we have whales accumulating like they do on every dip. When you have periods of very low volume, the market often gets handed over to traders, and traders will stick to a trend typically, and you need to break that and break it convincingly for them to switch their bias. You get them behind you, and then things really start to rock and roll again as you start to take out some key levels. So it's very interesting what's taking place right now, but on a kind of bigger time scale, you guys know ultimately this chart, in my opinion, just does this and continues as we see Bitcoin adoption, as we see crypto adoption, which we're seeing every day. There's ups and downs and volatility within that, but just like every adoption curve, you know, it's looking for continuation. This is leveraging the HODL model. We can estimate the Bitcoin impact / supply shock, talking about the halvenings, which is what's typically driven the Bitcoin price previously, which has ultimately, you know, really led the cryptocurrency market. I think that's changed, but ultimately I do think the supply shock does have an effect on everything and will increase the supply as it has done previously. Right now, we're just going through a lot of uncertainty. You know, it's uncharted waters for the cryptocurrency space where it's currently in. I would actually argue we're holding up quite well, not as well as I'd have hoped, but quite well in the grand scheme of things. And we are setting up and looking for that continuation, certainly as the world moves towards cryptocurrency adoption. So that is really all I have for you in this video, guys. Rather a long-winded one, but lots to talk about as we didn't make a video yesterday. Certainly very interesting what's taking place right now. We will keep you informed on this channel. So if you've enjoyed this content, a like and a comment is always appreciated. A share also. And remember, guys, hit that subscribe button to stay up to date daily on the cryptocurrency market space, along with a number of different altcoins. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I will catch you all in the next YouTube video.